Hey there, this is Brad, and I want to talk about using prop types in React to enforce accessibility, which I think is really, really cool. So I've been diving into React a bit more and specifically sort of how to sort of craft solid dumb components, meaning sort of the dumb presentational components that sort of render a UI. I'm less interested in sort of the business logic and sort of stuff like that. But anyways, I sort of get into this, I created a project called Dumb React, which you could sort of find here. And basically, what Dumb React does is basically just stitches together a static HTML page. So there's no logic, there's no conditionals, there's no sort of nothing. It's just sort of how to create a pretty static HTML page using React components. So all of these, or this page is constructed of a bunch of different components, and I have a storybook of those components sort of cataloged here in a new tab, and I have this application running. And what I've been doing is sort of using React's prop types to sort of help define the dynamic properties of each React component. So there's a great sort of page on the React documentation site that sort of talks about what prop types are and all the different sort of options and stuff like that. But as I sort of got into it, I sort of found there's a lot of utility to sort of defining these guardrails essentially around what props can contain and what sort of type of property they are and stuff like that. So what I want to do here is actually talk about how you can use prop types to make sure that people are following good accessibility guidelines. So I'll show a couple different examples, and I'll start here at the hero component. So right here, I have my hero.js component open. So I have a hero. It has an image with an SRC and an alt tag, sort of nothing terribly surprising, as well as a hero title and a hero description. And so this by itself, allows you to sort of, pass in a hero image SRC, hero image alt text, and hero image title and description. Now, what we're doing below this is sort of defining what the prop types are for each one of those individual properties. So you can see what I have here is I'm saying hero image SRC is a type is a string, right? So a path to a URL essentially. And I'm also adding this is required to this, and this sort of is sort of the sort of killer feature here, I think, because we could also add this to the alt text as well. So if I come over to my browser and inspect my hero and sort of go over to my console, you'll see I actually have a warning. It yells at you. So it says, warning, failed prop type. I'll sort of zoom in on this. Warning, failed prop type. The prop hero image alt is marked as required in hero, but its value is undefined. So this has to do with this little is required thing, right? So I'm basically saying this is required. It needs to be there, right? You must have an alt tag associated with your hero image. If I remove that is required thing and sort of it'll re-render the page, you could see that error or that warning is gone. So, but that's not what I want, right? I want to enforce this alt text by including this in this is required thing here. So now if I switch over into my app, and this is the place where I'm building the entire composition, this entire page, and you can see I'm including this hero and I'm passing in these properties, right? I'm passing in, this is my hero for the title. I'm passing in, this is my description for the description. I'm passing in this hero image that I'm defining up here for the for the actual path to the image, but you could see what's not here is the alt text, right? So how to sort of fix this warning is we want to add hero image alt, and we want to change that to, this is my alt text. And of course, it should be a very descriptive description of what the image is for low vision or screen reader users, and as well as for indexing and all sorts of good stuff. So anyway, so I added this property in here, and now that warning has gone away. So this is really, really powerful stuff. I'm just going to sort of show one more example. So that's one accessibility issue, right? Just sort of enforcing alt text. And then another accessibility issue that tends to happen is with this little guy, sort of this inline form that you tend to see a lot for things like search or sign up for email newsletter. So I could sort of come into my forms, and I'm calling this inline form because that's what it is. It's basically a text field and a button, right? It's sort of an input and an action. And one thing that I see a lot on a lot of different of my client websites and things like that is people will create these forms and will exclude a label. Now, the reason why they exclude a label associated with this input is because it doesn't actually get visibly sort of shown and sort of printed onto the UI in the browser, but that's no good reason to exclude it. A placeholder attribute is not a good substitute for a label. You still need to have a label in here to actually define what this input actually is. So in the case of this component, what I have is I have a label for an ID, and then I'm sort of defining the ID in the input here, and that sort of creates a relationship between these two things. And then on my class name here, what I'm doing is I'm adding a little sort of utility class that allows me to hide this label from the actual screen, but still keep it visible to screen readers, right? And what this allows us to do is sort of for a screen reader to sort of crawl through this page and actually sort of read out this label, which is obviously very helpful. So, and then you can see here what I have is a dynamic label property, right, for this. So once again, we sort of have this label, we're defining this label property, and now what I could do is sort of come down here again below where I'm sort of actually writing the JSX for this component, and I'm able to sort of define these prop types. So you can see I'm sort of defining the form method and the actions and the ID that creates that relationship between the label and the input. And then you could see this sort of the same thing here. Again, sort of label, prop types, string, it's expecting a string, and it is required. So if I remove that is required sort of thing, then that means that I can sort of get away with excluding that, which is obviously no good. We want to make sure that that label is always present. And so if I were to, where would that live? That would live in the header. So here's where I am sort of coming in here, and I have this label attribute attached. And if I get rid of that label, it's now going to yell at me, right? It's going to say, hey, it's expecting a label, it's marked as required, but its value is undefined. So I want to sort of share these examples because these are two pretty common accessibility problems that tend to find their way, in all sorts of different places on a lot of different web properties. And the cool thing with this, by using sort of prop types and just baking this into the component itself at the component level, as these components get ingested by other applications, right, in the form of a design system, this thing can be sort of exported and sort of bundled up and put on NPM or some other sort of, sort of package manager or whatever. Whenever the actual application ingests these components, and individual sort of product team developers start reaching for this inline form component or that hero component, they're forced to comply with these accessibility standards, which is great news, right? Because it used to be, this crazy sort of wild goose chase or sort of Easter egg hunt to find these accessibility things. So by baking it into everyone's workflow, by having these sort of warnings yell at individual developers if they're missing something related to accessibility, that's fantastic stuff. So I love this. Prop types no doubt are useful for tons of other things, but I think as I sort of get into it, one of the immediate things that jumped out to me was this ability to really sort of enforce good accessibility practices. So I hope you reach for this or something like this. I know that TypeScript and some other things have prop types and things like that. Yeah, bake this into your workflow and get better, more accessible experiences coming out the other end. So hope you enjoy this, and thanks. Bye.